So once again, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the 2018 National Scrabble Championship here in delightful London. This time, we are now into round 10, and we are seeing Scotland's Stu Harkness, who's having a bit of a purple patch at the moment, having beaten some of the strongest players here, Paul Gallen and Harshan in his last two rounds. Coming up against Lewis Mackay, former world ranked #1, and the reigning British match play Scrabble champion. So we join the game. It's Stu to begin. And one of those racks that really isn't close to anything anytime soon, so let's make the most of what we can. Five little words, things like Maffic or Amiki. I actually really like Maffic in this position. Played to the left or played upwards, depending on whether you are a normal, sane human being or you're someone who starts vertically. So MAFIC for 30 points. Okay, WI, not brilliant. But it's probably the highest, well, it is the highest score he's going to get. The other option is to play something like Waif, which will set up or leave both the T and the S hook on the end. But keeping a reasonable MIC. There we go, he's played Waif. Waif has a better keep, lower score. Maffic, just on static quick sim, comes top, but that's probably because of the score differential. Austin will have been frustrated not to get a D or a G for co-edited or geodetic. Stu has drawn a playable bonus. Well, playable at the moment. He has combing. COAMING, which would go perfectly across the top of Waif, but obviously he's not going to be able to play it perfectly across the top of Waif. Austin has the T I mentioned just now for the potential hooks on Waif. The question is whether he'll decide to maximize his score in this particular move by playing something such as Coated, COTED, and Waifed. Or whether he'll play something shorter like DOE, DOE across the top of Waif. Keeping a strong CITE. DOE has the added defensive benefit of frustrating plays underneath and above the A, so takes out the threats of the J, Z, and the X on either side. Well, Sim would suggest that E7 co-edit across the top. It's top score, just leaves the E. Austin's played it on the bottom instead of on the top. Getting in the way of combing. For me, hair loss achieved that, but in this situation, it was Austin's DOE. So far in this championship, we have seen some notable two-letter plays from the assembled brilliance witnessed in the opening rounds, not on the stream. Okay, I think I said, hold on, did I say Austin? Lewis. We witnessed in the opening round, but not on stream, a fantastic player play RO. We witnessed in the final game last night amazing play of AU by another of the assembled intelligentsia. So in this situation, I wonder whether Stu should consider playing IW and NAD, or maybe not. It's one of those situations where you have to consider, do I go all out for bonus, or do I try to keep the score ticking over? If you're going all out for bonus, then something like cow, or if you want to keep things balanced, something like mock. The problem with mock is you are setting up significant scoring opportunities for your opponent across the top, given that ECAD is good. As we're about to see, it's created a very, very high scoring spot for Lewis to offload a few tiles. So something like Covert is going to score well over 40. Yeah, played very quickly, not a surprise. That in turn does create a high scoring play across the top, although slightly harder to access by making Decad and Avow. But Stu in the nice place that having pursued the bonus keep, he has now got a bonus waning. He's got it set up in his rack. Does that mean that he knows it? Does that mean he's trying to talk himself into it being a word? Does play with few. It's the only place that it will play. Yeah. Good play. From Austin's point of view, when he sees a bonus going down, he'll be thinking, great, I'm going to get one of the floaters to go with my retail IRAC. Sorry, he's not. I keep saying Austin. Lewis is challenging. Waning to give an extra 5 points. But Lewis now almost certainly will play off a couple of tiles through that G. In my experience, these are the kinds of situations that can go wrong very quickly. If you play something such as Lig, keeping irate with that N floating, you think, great, I've got a retained position. Or indeed, playing Lig will create an E or an A hook onto the L down the right hand side. However, you pick out two vowels, and all of a sudden you have irate. Two vowels doesn't score anything. Being 60 behind, you then score 20 in 2 moves. You force yourself to have to play a bonus instead of it being a nice to have. Just as a side note here, few does take an S. Will both players be aware of that? Will it matter? Who knows? Certainly Austin, I keep saying Austin, certainly Lewis should take out the G because otherwise Stu's got organise. Obviously Stu has no influence over this, but I think knowing the situation, he would quite happily have one of the ends floating for Lewis to play inertial elsewhere. Somewhat reminiscent of a player, I believe, once playing Tarers in a position and leaving his opponent playing Brackenid. Oh my goodness. Right, we would expect Stu to be thinking of his Christmases have come at once. He's going to whack down organise in seconds here. He's got to play it so quickly. Come on, Stu. Yeah, I mean, he's got it set up on his rack. I think he's just enjoying it. Wow, okay. So 10, 11, 12, 13, 15, 16, 18, 19, 90. It's 221 points, ladies and gentlemen. Stu has scored 344 points in 4 moves. He is averaging just under 90 points a move. Lewis has drawn out a bonus. Which he's going to have to play. Obviously, he has Levia and he's created a position with Etic, but Lewis will probably be rueing not playing Lig or something similar. Okay, he's playing Velia instead of Levia. Personally, I marginally prefer Levia over Velia. I think he would have played Velia because he wanted to have more parallel play opportunity across the top. But if you played Levia, you have the option, if you then subsequently pick an M, to play across the top, making Metic, creating simultaneously line onto the triple file at the top, triple line at the top, making Emetic, as well as setting up a 9-timer down the left-hand side. These are the kinds of situations you really have to be thinking 5 moves ahead, because let's face it, Lewis isn't going to get back into this game in the next 4 moves. Stu, wishing that he had a cigar right now that he could light and lie back in an inflatable duck floating somewhere in the Med. As it is, unfortunately, we've still got to finish off this game. Could do with the G floating for age users. Personally, I'd also be considering plays such as ureas and coverts. You are restricting plays across the top of Velia, underneath Velia, across from the T of covert. You are frustrating. You're frustrating or setting up enhanced scores down onto the E of Velia. Saz keeps the score ticking over. Lewis's rack only makes 1-8, which is a trophy. There is no P for it though. It's the kind of rack that you actually quite like to have in this situation, in that it's got the makings of a bonus. It's got some scoring potential that you can make short words with. The fact that you can't really do a huge amount with it at the moment doesn't help. 2 6s I can see, and this is Tai Hoa, which, dear listener, if you're a fan of blocking 6s like me, you will know already. Doesn't take an S. Thoria, which does take an S. And of course has anagrams of Shortier and Airshot. So Lewis doesn't have a play that reaches across to the S of Saz. He He's 212 down currently, so he has 3 decent-sized bonuses away. He wants to preserve every opening that's on this board at the moment. Hoa does restrict the N and the I and the other I of waning, but it does allow you to play underneath. You have to balance score and openings, and I think that achieves it. Stu very quickly plays leak for 39, and Lewis now has Arietta. The note, Stu did have probably a better play in that situation, which would have been Saluki. Didn't really have time to look at it. Underneath the S of Saz, so fans of racing dogs, I believe, or hunting dogs will know what a Saluki is. Of course, Stu has now picked out Juma Ist and Stadium. So Lewis will be playing Arietta, I would imagine. Now the question is, will he play it making it aha? And say, come on Stu, take on me? Or will he play it making as? My thoughts are, personally, he should play it making certainly making a word. Yeah, playing it making as gives you flexibility across the top and bottom. I mean, playing aha scores the same. Of course, what he's not to know is that he's well, actually, he hasn't given Stu an additional place. Stadium and Juma are still going down anyway. For Stu, I think you have to play Stadium down to the O of Organise. You don't want to be opening up 9-timer. Yeah, exactly. This is unfortunately going to turn into a rout, and there's not a huge amount that Lewis could do about it. I think the playing tick instead of lig was a critical decision. I certainly think I would have played lig in that situation, but hey ho. So Lewis with another almost rack combines with an A to make Gantlope, and that's the only 8. He was probably eyeing up Prog through the R of Arietta. Prog keeps 2 positions open down there, and it creates the S hook, the front S hook for Sprog. Gives you a shot at picking out the one remaining I for an ing play onto the onto the G. Slightly distracted there because I've noticed that Stu has in fact picked out the other blank in an S, and is sitting pretty at the moment with Pungies. Pungies does play, and Pungies would still play if Lewis played Prog. You just play for more. The question is whether Stu will know that you can spell Pungies I-E-S. The more standard spelling is with a straight I. Actually, I am talking crap, of course, because prog will stop him playing punjies underneath, making ass. We're talking the donkey, we're not talking the posterior. Vague education moment for anyone who's interested. Never get your ECADs mixed up with your ECOD. I say that very specifically because ECAD does take an S and ECOD does not. Lewis generally opening up another 9-timer for Stu. Not too worried about that though, because now we're going to see whether Stu is confident that you can spell punjies I-E-S. As a side though, Lewis played what he had to there. The only way he's getting back in this game is with a massive play and subsequent massive plays. He has to set up 9-timers. Okay, Stu choosing to defend. I mean, punjies would have scored 101. So it has to be the top play, because even if Lewis gets a 9-timer, it's barely going to dent the lead at this point. Lewis would have been pleased to pick out blank R-E-Y, but it still wouldn't have made a 9-timer at this point. Would have had gyrolite and geometry. Stu has pre-bend, which will play in the positions across Arietta. His rack doesn't make any 8s though that I can see. Lewis has a number of options here. It'll be interesting to see what he decides to do, because if he still thinks he has a shot in this game, you play the bonus across the top or underneath Arietta, probably across the top. If you want to defend your already dreadful spread, you might decide to play something down from the S of Gues and frustrate the 2 parallel plays across Arietta. Because we have perfect knowledge in this situation, we know that the latter would be beneficial, because he would stop pre-bend. Actually, no, he wouldn't stop pre-bend being played, because it would still make even more of an overlap under Arietta. So for Stu, having done very few of these streaming games so far, he's been involved in 2 romper stompers, and this game in particular is the kind of game you want when you're playing a former world ranked #1. Couldn't really put a foot wrong. It's maybe Lewis who made an error in judgment in leaving that 9-timer open. But then how often do you get stung by a 9-timer through a G in 3rd place? Often enough. So static simulation is actually putting TOEY, at 01 as 2nd best choice after Protile from B14. That's PROTYLE. The reason for that, the reason for Protile being at that situation is by far the highest because it's tripling the Y. It's also creating a major scoring overlap along the bottom row if you get the ideal tiles and your opponent has dross. Lewis has opted for royalette. It's I think any bonus is going to lose in this situation. Much less. Pre-bend will now play straight under. You'd probably play it making lab, air, tin, and ed. We'd hope that Stu would see this. He doesn't have it set up on his rack though. With previous bonuses he's played, he's had it set on his rack ready to go. Did that with waning, did that with organize. Does this suggest he doesn't know pre-bend? And if he doesn't play pre-bend, what is he considering? I've got a feeling he may not know it if he hasn't already played it. Yeah, he's shuffling around 3-letter plays, which suggests to me that he's thinking about fishing on for the bonus. Obviously not realizing he already has it. Unsurprisingly, pre-bend at D14, making lab, is simming by far the highest. Yeah, he's definitely thinking about playing dep. If he does do that, if he is going down the route of playing for a bonus, you should try and keep the lines open. So you certainly shouldn't be playing that underneath Arietta. It'd be suicide anyway. He might be thinking about keeping the B for bonuses ending in able at the top. But as we know, after this move, he should be on 609. He's agonising a lot over which shorter word to play. And he's picked beep. Probably with the idea of blocking S hooks. The problem that he's got here is that there are very few vowels unseen, and he's just played all of his vowels. He's going to have a pretty awful rack unless he gets very lucky. The Q is still out. And ladies and gentlemen, hopefully you are back with us now. Just getting things back up to speed. So very much what we expected to happen. Stu drew out all consonants, played flax for a hell of a lot of points, then picked out the Q, which he's now played for a hell of a lot of points using the blank. Pretty much this is one of those nightmare games that you would not want to have at a national finals for Lewis. Stu has played reasonably solidly, and I think the mix, the two misses he's had, the bonus misses, Punji's for 101, pre-bend for 88. Possibly he should have seen one or the other at this level. I mean, we should be talking a score coming up to 700. But I think he's going to be relieved anyway. He's just achieved a win of over 200 points against one of the best players in the world. Although going back to something that I said yesterday, when you're in a losing position, you should continue to try to score as much as you can in order to salvage your spread. But equally, when you're in a winning position, yes, you have to defend. Let's try not to make any cock-ups so that you don't win from a winning position. But at the same time, you do need to focus and stay on the top of your game to really get the best out of it. Stu will win this one by over 200. He possibly should have won this one by more like 250 or 300. Lewis now looking at his rack and trying to salvage an out bonus that unfortunately won't come. The eights that I can see, B has boarding, K he has druking, B he has abjuring as well. With an A he has rigodon, with an E he has gravidon. With an N, of course, he has rounding and in ground. The best score he's got here, the best play, is simply dingo. Stu will have many options, but as I'm a gentleman, I prefer blonde. I think this game is a great illustration of how one two-letter move can make all the difference. It'd be interesting to go back and look at what simulation suggests about tick versus lig. Yeah, Lewis has indeed gone with dingo. Not really a lot else to consider with that one. And now Stu will be happy, I imagine, to go out. No, actually, he's pressing forward with scoring. He's played Bone. Oh, why would he play Bone and not Bode? He's played Bode. No, he's played Bone. Wow. Okay. I guess what he's done there is he's given Lewis's dog a bone. Doesn't bode well though. So out Lewis goes with run and rasp. Or if any Americans watching, rasp. We're just now looking at the strict sim between lig and tick. Um, Stu and Lewis are just rechecking the score. Lewis has asked for a recount in case he's won. So just looking at the simulation now, I mean, obviously it's just relatively few iterations, but to apply, there's not a huge amount between lig and tick, but lig is emerging ahead. Slightly higher win percentage, running between 0.5% and 1%. Higher valuation because it scores better and the keeper's slightly stronger. I think the decision was always going to be marginal, but as I said yesterday, sometimes it's the most marginal decisions that can make the biggest impact on the game. But certainly simulation here would suggest that lig was, by a small degree, the better play. You just wouldn't expect to be stung by quite that much for less than a 1% margin between two plays. So there we go. Lewis off to lick his wounds. Stu off to buy some champagne and down it before the next round. Thank you for joining us for round 10 of the NSC 2018. My name is Brett Smitheram, and I'm off to get a coffee.